Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining. My name is Mia Marzotto, and I'm the Senior Advocacy Officer at Translators Without Borders. Thanks again for being here, for making the time for this. So this is the launch of a coordination guide for local responders that was developed in collaboration between Translators Without Borders, the Global Education Cluster, Save the Children, and the input of many others. So we'll begin with a few housekeeping points. So let me see. There we go. So the event today will be, we'll take about 40 minutes or so for a series of interventions and of course the presentation of the new guide. And then we'll go into a Q&A session. So as attendees, you can type your questions in the Q&A tab on the right side of your screen, which you should already be able to see at the moment. You should also be able to access live captions and subtitles in English, French, and Spanish. So if you select the cogwheel again on the right side of your screen, you'll be then able to turn on captions and subtitles and choose the language you want to listen in on the event. A reminder to everybody that we are recording the event, and the slides and the recording will be available afterwards at the same link. So I think this is all for the agenda and housekeeping. So without further ado, I'll give a quick round of introductions on the speakers that we have online today. And sorry, I'm just figuring out the two screens. Cannot do this. There we go. Okay. So there, as I said, the guide was developed in collaboration with the Global Education Cluster. So representing the Global Education Cluster, we have online the acting global coordinator, Elisa Radisone. And also the Global Education Cluster localization specialist, Kemal Taylan. We also have Fatuma Ibrahim from the Child Protection Area of Responsibility, and then joining on behalf of Save the Children, localization advisor Lillian Bitonga Mbassa, and Marian Helen Ogden, who was instrumental in coordinating and making this project happen. And finally, we also have Marina Skuric-Prodanovic. I hope I pronounced that rightly, on behalf of the Interagency Standing Committee Results Group 1, who will be talking about some work that the Results Group 1 is working on that's very much linked to some of the objectives of this guide and the broader localization agenda. And we're hoping to also have Handa Tia from Soul for Development Yemen online, although we're having a couple of connection issues at the moment. So so we'll see once we get there. Okay, so I guess I'll just pass the floor to Elisa for some opening remarks, and then we'll also hear from Fatuma. Elisa, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mia, and welcome everyone on behalf of the Global Education Cluster. So it goes without saying that the COVID-19 pandemic has reinforced in all of us the understanding of the critical role that local actors community-based organizations, national NGOs, and local authorities play in any humanitarian response. Within the global education cluster, local actors represent more than half of all education cluster partners. We, as humanitarian actors, we often focus on strengthening the capacity of local actors. But it's quite time that we shift our mindset and we start thinking about building our own capacity to engage with them. And as Global Education Cluster in the past years, we have really welcomed the engagement and partnership with Translators Without Borders. We have engaged throughout last year in a number of consultations with local partners and national organizations to try and better understand how the Global Education Cluster can better support them and how we can facilitate the localization agenda. As part of these conversations, as part of these discussions, it was extremely clear that language plays a pivotal role, both in terms of supporting or putting some challenges in the participation and engagement of local actors. And this is where basically the partnership with Translators Without Borders, Soul for Development, CPUR, and Save the Children started. We're extremely glad that to see this guide being developed and launched today. At the moment, we have 9 translations already of the guide. I know another one is being finalized. And we welcome your participation and engagement, but also we really encourage you to share and further disseminate the guide across your networks. We would like to give a special thanks to the Global Education Cluster Strategic Advisory Group that really has been the driving force of the development of the guide. And we look forward to continuing the partnership with all the partners that have contributed to the guide and to expand our partnership to really make sure that we continue building our capacity to better engage with local partners and support them in leading and driving the localization agenda. Thank you very much, Mia. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Elisa. And it's great. It has been great working with the Global Education Cluster throughout this project and seeing your commitment on this issue. Fatuma, would you like to perhaps share a few opening thoughts on behalf of the child protection area of responsibility?
Thank you very much, Mia. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning to all the people who have had the time to join the launch. The Child Protection Area of Responsibility is really delighted to be part of this process and part of the project. This is one of the areas we've been collaborating with the Global Education Cluster and by extension, Translators Without Borders. One of the things that the CPR is very interested in is enhancing the participation of local actors, national actors in the humanitarian coordination and by extension, humanitarian response. And we've realized over time that one of the biggest barriers to participation is language. And in addition to that, most of the people we've been working with, especially when we were implementing the localization initiative for the CPR led by Save the Children and Street Child UK, we kept on hearing from the local actors who are also playing the role of co-coordination at different levels that they do not actually understand how humanitarian coordination works. They do not understand how they can join. They do not understand the benefits. They had a lot of questions. The members of the child protection country coordination groups, especially the local actors, also had the same questions. So this project for us is so timely that it will provide the guide to local actors, national actors, and also even the government, so that they are able to engage with the coordination mechanism. And of course, we know some of them may not really want to engage with the coordination mechanism. It may be too cumbersome or it may be too far, but at least they would understand how, if they don't want to be part of it, how they can engage and also contribute to the humanitarian response. As Elisa just said, we have all realized the critical role local responders are playing in humanitarian response. And anything that we can do to enhance their participation will be very, very useful. So this guide for us is one of the efforts that we are going to use consistently and persistently to help local responders be part of the coordination, humanitarian coordination mechanism, or on how to engage with them in ways that are more meaningful. We are committed also to continuing with the collaboration with the Global Education Cluster, as well as Translators Without Borders, and working with our country coordination groups. We'll see how to translate this guide into more local languages so that we can get not only the national level local actors, also the more local ones at the lowest level, past the sub-regional, maybe district level, so that they can get an understanding of what the humanitarian coordination is all about. So we are very, very delighted, and we are looking forward to working more in this line and supporting our local actors to be more participative in the coordination mechanism. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fatuma. That was great to know as well, or it has been great having the support of the Child Protection Area of Responsibility as well. So as I was saying at the beginning, we're trying to get colleagues from Yemen also online, but there seems to be still a connection issue. So I think we can go ahead and present the guide, and then hopefully we'll be able to also have the presentation from our colleagues in Yemen and hear their experience on the issue of language barriers. In the meantime, I also want to remind you that you can post your questions in the Q&A tab at any point. So let me just move through here. Okay, so you should be able to see my my slides now. Okay, so like I was saying at the beginning, this guide was really designed as in a very collaborative process, and we're quite proud to see it out in the world right now. What we understood quite early on in the consultation process is that there was not much that was specifically targeting local and national organizations when it came to providing them with the information that they need about how the humanitarian cluster system works and how they can get involved. So this guide the aim of this guide was really to fill that information gap. So before I walk you actually through the guide, just a little bit more on the consultation process, on how the guide was developed. So we started with a workshop with the Global Education Cluster Strategic Advisory Group members, and especially the representatives of local and national organizations that are part of that group at the beginning of 2020, so the beginning about a year ago. And then we completed a series of key informant interviews with members of local and national organizations, as well as coordinators at the national level and at the global level. And we focused specifically on 4 countries when it came to consultations with NGOs and staff that were on the ground in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Yemen, South Sudan, and Venezuela. We also have been conducting, together with the Global Education Cluster as Translators Without Borders, another project assessing the accessibility of education-related guidance specifically. And so under that project, there was an online survey that went out to education and child protection responders. And so we also added some questions that then were helpful to inform this guide, and the survey received about 325, I think, answers, which, yeah, again, were included in this analysis. Then we completed, we developed the first draft that then was reviewed and validated through the Global Education Cluster Localization Task Team and also through other key informants, many of whom are on the line today. And then we designed the guide and translated, as it was mentioned, the guide is currently available in 9 languages, and we hope that it will be available in more. We definitely still have at least 1 language in the pipeline from our side. So what exactly, or just the top line of our finding during the consultations, which sort of like helped us develop the guide, was that there was this point raised about the importance of framing this in terms of rights and responsibilities, of obligations and benefits. So showing both sides of the coin and everything that actually is involved when local and national organizations do participate in coordination. There was also like a big call for having a short and practical guide, and also something that would be easy to understand and adapt to specific contexts, given that there are a lot of variables when the humanitarian coordination system is actually implemented in a specific context. And also a call for using plain language, so avoiding jargon, or at least explaining the jargon in clear language, and translating or making the guide available in as many languages as possible. So these were some of the points that we tried to include, or that helped us inform the development of the guide. So actually, now what does the guide include? So it has a question and answer format in line with the plain language principle. So putting the most important information at the top, and then making sure that there is a clear structure and a simple language. And the first part is a simple explanation of the cluster approach. And maybe as I speak, I could try sharing my screen with the guide. You should be able to see it also live. Yeah. So the first part of the guide, as I was saying, includes a simple explanation of the cluster approach, and it uses this familiar graphic that we slightly adapted and then of course translated as well. The second part, I would say, also goes into the benefits of being a cluster member, including sort of like the reasons why organizations or a local or national organization should join the cluster system, including having increased influence, increased visibility, a better understanding of procedures and funding opportunities, as well as access to technical guidance and support, and access to other organizations and possible partnerships. Then the guide goes into explaining what it actually entails, to like what is needed in a sense, what is required of cluster members. And of course, with the understanding that there is no fixed membership criteria or application process. So again, this is where a lot of contextualization is important, but in general, we try to provide the key factors to keep in mind, mostly around time, making sure that there is relevance to between the work of the specific organization and the specific sector or cluster. And then, of course, sharing the minimum commitments that as humanitarian organizations in general, we have committed to upholding. And then there is also a sort of like a step-by-step process on how to join, or at least where to look for information, because that was also one of the other things that we heard during the consultation, was some general confusion about where to find where to find this kind of information and this kind of guidance. And then finally, the guide also touches briefly on other structures and other important coordination mechanisms that are national and local organizations should be aware about, with a mention, of course, of NGO coordination mechanisms, country and global structures, and a brief explanation as well of government UN co-led contexts, or where coordination is co-led by the government and the UN mechanisms, and also refugee contexts with the role of UNHCR, of course. And finally, we have a list of other key resources and documents. Like I was mentioning before, one of the findings from the consultations was that people didn't quite know where to look for information. So that's hopefully a helpful list to start with, and also a list of the key coordination acronyms, which sometimes can be confusing and jargony and hard to understand. You'll see that throughout the guide, we have these little sections that are specifically related to the global education cluster, or to the education cluster. And this is because, of course, the guide was developed in coordination with and in partnership with the Global Education Cluster. But we have released the guide in both a PDF design version and a Word document, with the idea that this can be adapted to specific contexts, but also to other clusters. And we hope that people will do that. Coming back to the presentation, just a few additional points that I want to share about how you can use it. Like I just said, we really hope that you'll take this and edit it and contextualize it further. We recognize that it can often be hard to make a global document relevant to specific contexts. So that's also one of the reasons why we've decided to release the Word document, so that it can be further contextualized and adapted. We do encourage others to take on making this guide available in further languages. It is currently available in Arabic, Bengali, Congolese Swahili, English, French, Kenyan Swahili, Lingala, Portuguese, and Spanish, and Juba Arabic soon to come as well. But the more languages, the better. So one way of using it is also translating it and making it more accessible to even more people. Of course, sharing it with your networks, sharing it with in-country coordination groups and so on, making sure that people do know that it exists, that it's a great way of using it. And then finally, but perhaps most importantly, we invite you to provide feedback on it. So whether it's directly at us or through the Global Education Cluster, we would be more than happy to hear your feedback on the guide. So last point from me, of course, is where you can find the guide, and it is on the Education Cluster website. The link that is provided here will take you to all the different language versions in both PDF and Word documents. So please do go check it out. So that's all from my side at this point in terms of presentation. I wonder whether we've been able to get Hend on the line, and I'm afraid not. Sorry, just one moment. I don't think I see her. Maybe Lillian, would you like to come in now as sort of like to present Save the Children's take on this guide and why you think this work is important, and yeah, any thoughts that you might want to share?
Happy to do so. So I can maybe share like a few quick comments on the importance of the guidance. But it's interesting that I was part of consultations in 2007, 2008 on the global humanitarian architecture, and already then the issue of the lack of inclusivity of coordination mechanisms were already really strong. And I think maybe that's just a testament of the how slowly things change and evolve, maybe in the system. But it's really good and long overdue also to have documents on coordination, on the humanitarian architecture, that are trying to demystify it. Not the only one, not the first ones, but maybe there's an attempt to be way more systematic and collective, and to also contextualize the information. So I think we already said it, that the guidance came really out of a need of local organizations, national organizations that we were discussing, and highlighting the opacity of the humanitarian coordination, how difficult it was to find even basic information on where are meetings taking place, how are decisions taken, are they even taken in meetings, are they taken in bars? So yeah, it was really a need that was coming and that was highlighted, and that we were really happy, we wouldn't say also to participate in having the message come. And we really found that we really felt it was important, and not only just because we are the only civil society organization, so the only NGO that has a global role as a cluster lead agency. So we really and strongly feel that this is for the system to include the local actors and not the other way around, which is mainly what is happening, that as a local actor or you're somewhere, it's to you to make the effort to understand what is going on. So we really need to work collectively to ensure that the onus doesn't lay and stay only with the local and national actors. So it's really great more and more local actors and national actors are claiming their space. There are more and more inclusive practices and good practices that are coming here and there, but collectively we definitely need to do much more. So the guidance is a tiny step in helping to demystify the international coordination structure. And we really hope, we're happy that other clusters, in particular the area of responsibility, the child protection area of responsibility, have endorsed it. And we really encourage other global clusters to do the same and use this guide so that they can ensure there is more inclusivity. As an NGO, I think the process of developing this guidance has been really also a learning process. it has highlighted that we do create barriers that we need to be very intentional and active in assisting to dismantle. We also need to acknowledge, we need to build up, and we need to value the role of local actors, and really ensure that it's not just in words that we are saying that that the coordination has to assist and complement what local actors are doing. So yeah, so we hope this will help, that the goal with this is to help shift how coordination takes place at national and subnational levels, so that at the end, local actors, they don't need guidance to be able to understand what is going on, but it's the other way around. It's the international comings that are complementing what is happening in the field. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you a lot, Lillian. Yeah, I do look forward to that point in time when it will be the other way around. And just as a testament of, you know, the barriers that as internationals we sometimes do create to local and national organizations, I think that, you know, part of the reason why we can't hear yet from, or we can't, we're having trouble connecting with our colleagues who are in Yemen and who are supposed to speak right now, it's because of that. So I'm sorry about that. We're trying to figure it out in the meantime. While we do that, I think I'm gonna just quickly give the floor to Marina. Like we were mentioning at the beginning, the fact that Results Group 1 is also working on similar guidance and on similar efforts to increase the participation and leadership of local and national organizations. Would you like to come in and share a few thoughts on that?
Yes, thank you very much, Mia. It's a real pleasure to be here. So first of all of this work is incredibly important because obviously all these different pieces add up to what we hope is a puzzle where we have greater and more meaningful participation of local and national NGOs and other local actors and coordination. So I think what I wanted to talk about today is two pieces of work which are sort of coming through in the coming months. One is there will be a draft guidance on a draft framework for engagement with local governments, which is being led by another part of the work stream. But the one I wanted to flag today is the draft guidance on localization of coordination. And it's really about looking at participation, leadership of local and national actors. It's an interagency piece of work. The hope is to get IC guidance approved, ultimately sometime in April, probably after significant rounds of consultations. It's about localization and coordination. It's not about funding directly, but it does touch upon funding. It recognizes that you can't have strong coordination capacity in case there is no funding for capacity building. And we realize that some clusters already have local NGOs in their midst, and in some cases up to 75% of members are there, which is great. But what was really of interest to us is to see how can we increase participation both vertically and horizontally in different parts of the IC structure. So definitely the call for equitable participation, and this is something the guidance tries to address. The second is that the participation shouldn't be perfunctory. So it's not an afterthought. It's actually about quality, not just membership. So it should be meaningful. The quality of the participation should be high, and also there's an issue about promoting greater leadership by local and national actors. We're also aware that on the sidelines, and this is something that your guidance also speaks to, it's about how much do we involve and include local and national NGOs in particular in them understanding what is expected of them. So we're also concerned that, of course, participation doesn't overwhelm them because we realize the capacities can sometimes be limited. So the guidance tries to limit these three different considerations. Hopefully there's nothing too surprising with the guidance. It's just gone out for consultations and comments on Friday, I believe. It's going to be consulted by IC Results Group 1, the Global Clusters, the Gender Reference Group, national and international NGO consortia. So we expect between 200 and 300 people to actually review this draft and to give us comments. So we can imagine localization is always something that's high on everyone's radar. So we imagine that there'll be high level of interest. And obviously the key thing is not just to have guidance, but ultimately what does it actually mean? And are we progressing? So what this guidance also tries to do is include very tangible indicators whereby you be able to monitor progress across different humanitarian settings to see where are we going from year to year. Where were we in 2018? Where are we in 2021, etc. So this is something that we will be looking at, and also obviously looking forward to getting feedback from colleagues. And then the deadline for comments is 19 February for this draft guidance. And then finally, just to give a shout out to Save the Children, the Education Cluster, and Translators Without Borders, who have actually are working on translating this draft guidance into French, Arabic, and Spanish, so we can have as many local and national actors being able to actually look at the draft and understand its translation, as you've rightly pointed out, because this really comes up as an issue in sometimes being presenting a challenge to participation. That's it from me, and very happy to answer questions, and we look forward to also having many of, I'm sure, people who are on the call provide comments. Back to you, Mia.
Thanks a lot, Marina. Just in case people might not have seen the draft or have received the draft yet, like, is there somewhere specifically where they can look, or someone in particular they might get in touch with if they're interested in providing feedback?
Depending, there are many places. So I think one is we have the 3 NGO consortia, SCHR, ICFA, and Interaction for international NGOs. We have NEAR also doing regional consultations and consultations on the guidance for national NGOs. So if you're a national NGO, I'd be looking at somewhere in between ICFA and NEAR consultations as your entry point. Obviously, for some, I know that some people are also part of results groups, so you can also do so through the ISE results groups at global level, the global clusters. So if you're working together with one of the global clusters, there are many different places, but I'm just noting the few where you can. It's not online because it's a draft, but these are the key entry points. Back to you, Mia.
Thanks a lot. Great. So, Kamal, would you like to try and share your screen? Because perhaps we have found a way to hear from Hind and Sol for Development Yemen.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, great. So. Sorry for the inconvenience, but our colleagues in Yemen have some issues with connecting to this live event. So it's just a good example of some of the challenges that local organizations can have with regards to lack of infrastructure, including the technology. So what we will do is we will try something. We will try to play. We have received their voice messages, so we will show the slides and play the sound. So here we go. I hope you can hear the sound from my computer as well.
Hello, everyone. Today we're talking about language barriers in humanitarian coordination from Sol's point of view, and we're putting it as our experience. I'm going to speak about the 3 main areas of focus that Sol and other education partners on the ground face. Mostly recently. The 3 focus areas are starting from the least, which is writing proposals, acquiring knowledge, and then monitoring of activities.
Okay, I think you can hear it well.
Yes.
Just to speak briefly about each area of focus, we'll start with writing proposals, which is the least challenging area, to compare between the past and present. In the past, it was mostly in writing the proposal, whether in education or whatsoever sector is, easier because there were few outlines from the donor. So the proposal writers were able to present their ideas the way they wished. The proposals and concept notes were quite shorter, with short narrative description demanded. In the present, because of the complicated way of writing proposals and lots of requests, as well as more guidelines and more standards, it becomes complicated for the writers to convince the donors with their ideas, because it becomes rigid with the same template for some donors. So here the demand is, or the must is, to have the writers have to have sophisticated skills to convince the donors by writing in this limited frameworks, let's say. The second point is acquiring knowledge. For acquiring knowledge, we're talking about mostly the vast gap between project planning and implementation. For the project planning and writing, it's a must that the writer acquires excellent linguistical skills, for he or she, as we said before, write a full proposal, convincing the donor to fund such a project. So the challenge comes when it's applied for implementation. The teams in the field, mostly in Yemen, are speaking Arabic and they're not English speakers. So it becomes more challenging to reflect all what's in the proposal to them. So what we have at all to support our field teams, that we are conducting orientation sessions in the beginning of each project to enrich our field teams with all information needed in the appropriate language. However, this is a one-time event in the project lifetime, and it's not enough for them to get more updates and more knowledge. We wish we could provide more support for them, but it's a bit challenging for us to conduct this activity in a regular basis, for we still have other loads of commitments to deal with. Here is the main challenge for them. It's a one-shot activity. They get the whole information in the beginning, but they cannot update themselves. They cannot free read whenever they want. They cannot surf internet because the whole documents are in English. There is no Arabic translation for that. Also, when it comes to attending cluster meetings, mostly it's in a specific level of attendance. Not all the project team members can attend, and even if they attended, the language barrier here plays a big role, because most of the coordinators, whether in the national level or even in the sub-national levels, are not Arabians. So there are some challenges in communication. Okay, let's talk about the last one, which is monitoring of the activities. As we know, we are humanitarian actors. Our main goal is to support public sector. And here in Yemen, our education system is based solely on Arabic language. Added to this, in the field, we do not have another option but to work through the education authorities. And here it becomes the thing more complex for us. They impose their dominance to supervise, monitor, and sometimes implement most of the activities. So all documents going back and forth between project team and authorities must be in Arabic. And here is the gap. We're trying to minimize this gap as much as possible by translating most of the tools, procedures, SOPs, whatsoever. However, it's not enough and it's not professional in all times. This is one of the major, or it's the major challenge, let's say, because it's a demand for the time being to have all this in Arabic, which is not available.
So I will go ahead and download the last slides, last voice message.
And here comes the most important part of what's needed to be done. When we talk about localization, we need to talk about the base or the basic thing of it, which is coordination, a close and firm coordination with education authorities at all levels, because we're working with all levels, starting from district offices to the ministry, the education ministry. So we need this close and firm coordination and to spread this kind of knowledge among all people. Number two, we need to provide all the guidelines, SOPs, tools, and so on in Arabic versions. And also we need to make them accessible online and offline for all the teams in the field whom are not very excellent English speakers, reach them easily and to enrich themselves with any time possible for them. This would make it very easy for all parties of humanitarian work, and this would make our work easier than before. Thank you so much for your patience. Thank you so much for listening, and that's it. Thank you.
And thank you, Handan Fatima from Soul Organization in Yemen. Back to you, Mia.
Thank you, Kamal. I think there were quite a few really interesting and relevant points raised there by Hand. I guess my main takeaway from that is that this is just what we've tried to do with this guide is just like one little drop. The issue of language barriers, it's definitely broader than that, and so like Ken was saying, we really need to make sure that we're taking and making available the right kind of time and resources and spaces to be able to address these issues in practice, even when it comes to the languages of coordination meetings, and making sure that everybody, including national authorities, feel comfortable enough and to contribute and really actually lead on responses because that's ultimately what we want to see. So I don't see any other questions that are coming in the live Q&A. I don't know if anybody attending has any burning questions that they would like to share, or even comments. Feel free to post them in the live event Q&A tab, and we can address them now. Otherwise, I think we can we can close the event, but I'll give a few moments for people to see if there are any other questions coming in. Okay, so I don't really see any questions. You do have the link there with it, where the guidance can be found, and on the Global Education Cluster website under the localization work tab. So we've shared the link a few times. And again, just as a reminder, you can find the guide and all the translations that are currently available in both a PDF and a Word document. And we really do invite you to disseminate it further at a country level, and also to further adapt it, adding any information that might be relevant to the specific context where you're working, or even to another cluster if you wish to adapt this for another cluster. We also, of course, welcome your feedback on the same website where the guide lives. There is a short form where you can provide feedback on the guide itself, and you can also email the help desk at the education cluster with any comments or questions you might have. Another reminder is that the recording of this event will be made available, and we'll have also a recording only of the section of the presentation, in case that might be useful to share, and of the slides as well. Oh, I do see one question coming in, which is, will the document be translated into additional languages? Is this an option? This is definitely an option, in the sense that it's something that we do want to make happen at the moment under our current collaboration. As I said, there's only one more additional language that we have in the pipeline, which is Juba Arabic, but part of the reason why we've made the document available in an accessible format is that so that people can also provide other translations, and we do hope to be able to support, as Translators Without Borders, to be able to support more translations. So just one in the pipeline for us at the moment, and we also welcome for others to take on this task if needed, or at least let us know if it's needed, and we can figure out a way of making it happen. Yeah, and maybe if you do have requests for other translations, I would recommend emailing the help desk of the Global Education Cluster. The email is also in the Q&A box, so that we know that there is a need for further translations. Okay, so I think if there are no further questions, I think we can wrap things up here. Again, I want to thank everybody who was on the line presenting, especially our colleagues in Yemen who went above and beyond, Hind and Fatma, to make sure that we were able to hear the very important points that you had to raise. And thank you everybody who's joined. The recording will be available at this link, and you have the link to the guide. So we're excited to see it out in the world, and hopefully this will help us all move in the right direction towards localization. Thanks again, everybody, for joining. Bye-bye.
Thanks, bye.
Thank you, bye.
Okay, thank you, everyone.